Welcome to the September 27th, 2021 meeting of the Sandusky City Commission. We'll have an invocation offered by myself, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Lord, we ask for your wisdom as we make some tough decisions in this meeting. Help us to carefully consider the relevant information that has been gathered. Help us to be innovative as we brainstorm solutions. Help us to wisely evaluate our options, considering the pros and the cons. Help us to be unified in making the best possible decision and to effectively carry them out. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Tresser, will you call the roll?
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Ms. Twine?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Meinzer?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of September 13th, 2021. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the September 13th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Without objection, that motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Are there any residents in the audience that have questions or comments pertaining to tonight's agenda? Step to the microphone and identify yourself and give us your address. We'll listen to your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioner, staff. I have a question on item number 1, which is the installation of security cameras and video surveillance for the Mylander Pavilion at the Jackson Street Pier, $31,000 and change. Looks like we're using $7,900 from the sewer fund and $7,900 from the water fund. Perhaps when we get to that point of the meeting agenda, we can get an explanation on how that project qualifies for water and sewer funds. And also an explanation into, has there been any incidences of vandalism or any other items at that pavilion? If not, is that expenditure really needed? So, I don't know, maybe they're looking for smokers or skateboarders or something, I don't know. So, thank you.
Any additional questions from the audience regarding tonight's agenda?
Greetings, Tom Lamarca, 206 48th Street. On item number 4, and I've asked this question in the past regarding the demolition of the 5 properties that are slated for tonight's agenda. The property at 1029 5th Street, parcel 57-000328. You're going to tear down the gentleman's garage, and I'm curious as to whether you discussed offering that family the grant equal to the cost of the demolition so that they could fix that garage, because I see that we're going to go back on all those property owners and assess them for asbestos abatements and for the demolition itself. So did you offer to fix the garage for them or help them get that fixed? I know they're broke, or at least that's what they told us in the past. Thank you.
Additional questions from the audience regarding agenda items only? Those questions will be answered as that legislation comes before us. We have a public hearing tonight regarding the CGB annual report.
And then the share.
I believe, Mr. Webster, can you share with us who's going to be conducting that hearing?
You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Through the commission president to the commission, I believe Jonathan Holliday is available for that. Nicole Growe from his office will be formally making the presentation.
Excellent. This is a public hearing. Questions and comments will be permitted at the conclusion of the presentation. Mr. Holliday or Ms. Growe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Brady. I will turn it over to Nicole Growe from my staff to lead this public hearing.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Hi. So tonight, I'm going to talk about the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or the CAPER, for 2020. So going over the executive summary, the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report details the City of Sandusky's accomplishments during the Community Development Block Grant Year, Program Year 2020. It also shows the achievements towards meeting the goals outlined in the City of Sandusky's 2019 to 2023 5-year consolidated plan. For the program year 2020, the City of Sandusky was allocated $743,000 and $304, to spend on eligible activities during the period beginning July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. The annual funding is calculated through a formula allocation from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Sandusky administers several activities that include public facility improvements, clearance and demolition, and public services, to name a few. Prior year resources in the amount of $289,642 and program income deposits totaling $28,735 gave the city a total of $1,061,682. In addition to the normal allocation and prior year resources, the city was awarded 2 rounds of COVID funding to be utilized to prepare, prevent, or respond to the coronavirus. This total allocation is $622,051. While project eligibility remains the same, the deadlines for spending these funds down are different. That's great. National objectives. The program rules state that in order to be eligible for funding, every CDBG funded activity must qualify as meeting one of the 3 national objectives of the program. This requires that each activity meet specific tests for either benefiting low and moderate income persons, preventing or eliminating slum and blight, or urgent need. There are some categories that are exempt, and those include planning, capacity building, program administration, and technical assistance. This is a chart that summarizes all the slides I'm going to talk about next, so I'm not going to go over this. So these are the goals of the CAPER. The first is housing, and the action for housing is to provide affordable housing and remove barriers for fair housing. And the accomplishments for that goal include that the fair housing consultant assisted with 84 calls regarding fair housing questions. The consultant also provided fair housing material for residents in need of assistance. The next goal is neighborhood stabilization, and the action for that is to include the quality of life for people living in low and moderate income neighborhoods through public investment in facilities improvements and services, as well as the elimination of blight. There were 3 accomplishments for this, and the first was the City of Sandusky allocated $270,000 in funding for public facilities, and that included 2 parking lot reconstruction projects at Wayne and Market Street in their parking lots, and a shoreline erosion remediation project at Shoreline Park, and also a safety design for the Hayes Avenue corridor. The City of Sandusky allocated $50,000 in acquisition and $110,396 in clearance and demolition. The city used $106,267 of prior year funds to demolish 8 dilapidated structures that were beyond repair. Additionally, the city purchased 4 structures using its 2020 allocation prior year funding, and the remaining funds were dispersed after the program year ended in June for ongoing demolitions that were in progress at the end of the program year. The last accomplishment of the 3, the City of Sandusky allocated $150,000 for code enforcement activities. The city used $108,865 towards code enforcement inspections and enforcement eligible areas. The remaining balance will be carried into the 2021 program year. In total, 2,336 units were inspected, resulting in 728 corrections. The next goal is special needs assistance, and the action for that is to promote access to public services for special need populations, generally assumed to be low and moderate income, including but not limited to programs addressing youth and children, seniors and elderly and frail elderly, veterans and persons with mental, physical, or developmental disabilities, alcohol or drug addiction, HIV/AIDS, or other special needs. There were 3 accomplishments in this goal. The first is during the program year, there was $5,000 allocated to the City of Sandusky's recreation program for the implementation of the Summer Parks program and the spring and winter break camps for children residing within the city. In total, there were more than 126 children participating in this program, and it's suspected that participation numbers may be lower than expected due to COVID. The second accomplishment during the program year was $15,000 of COVID funding was allocated to OGO for their mobile food pantry program, which provided 1,521 meals and served 1,300 households in low moderate income areas. And then the final accomplishment, special needs assistant, was done during the program year for $30,000 of COVID funding, which was allocated to the Erie County Senior Center for their Meals on Wheels program. In total, the program benefited 221 elderly citizens within the city. The last goal was the response to COVID, and the action for that goal was to prepare, prevent, or respond to the coronavirus. Promote safe meal delivery services, and to assist those in need who were impacted by the virus. The accomplishments for that program was during the 2020 program year, the City of Sandusky made available $45,000 in funding to promote access to public services for special needs populations that were generally assumed to be low and moderate income. Of the $45,000 available, $30,000 was awarded for the Erie County Senior Center and the Meals on Wheels delivery to the elderly, and $15,000 was awarded to OGO for their mobile food pantry, which was based in an LMI census tract. Looking at target areas for the 2020 program year, the City of Sandusky assisted low and moderate income areas of the city, in addition to improving the city as a whole. Assistance was made available citywide to persons meeting the CDBG eligibility requirements for low and moderate income benefit. The city has identified 5 projects that benefited low moderate income persons citywide. These include fair housing, public facilities, infrastructure activities, blight elimination, code enforcement, and food assistance. Below is a chart showing that there was 100% allocated and 80% was actually utilized. This map shows all the eligible CDBG areas that are considered LMI. All of the orange areas are census tracts that fall into that category. Attached is the public notice that was run in the Sandusky Register. This was run September 10th of 2021. We didn't receive any public comments, so I don't have any of those to share with you. And then this is my information. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself to begin with. I am Nicole Growe. I am the new CDBG administrator. I'm taking over for Debbie. So that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Croy. Are there any questions or comments from the public during this public hearing regarding CDGB annual report? Commissioners, questions or comments regarding this CDGB annual report?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Poole.
Ms. Growe, if you would, I don't expect a detailed answer now, but with regard to the housing consultant and his 84 questions he answered, could you get us a report from him about what he actually accomplished? Which just kind of, you know, what did he deal with and what were the outcomes of his interactions with the public for those questions? Leave it to you to put something together that gives us some idea of what we're getting for this kind of money. And with regard to housing, code enforcement, same concept, and I imagine there's probably information on that. If at some point you could send us something that indicates what actually has been accomplished by the code enforcement, not just a long list of we inspected, did we accomplish anything, what gives us some idea. what kind of condition the houses are, the places are in that are in the city, so we know that we're putting funds to something that's of value. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Additional
Thank
comments
you.
or questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Meiser?
going through the supporting documentation, I was a little surprised that the Meals on Wheels was only in the 50s, like they only serve about 50 meals. I mean, it's a great job. I know, I see them going around, but in Sandusky, I've been in a lot of homes, and there's a lot of malnutrition with elderly. They're stuck in their homes, and some of it's mental illness, some of it might be some alcohol abuse or whatever, but I know Sue does a good job over there at serving our seniors, and I think this is a good opportunity. If any neighbors know of a neighbor that may be stuck in their house and doesn't look that healthy, they might want to call serving our seniors, because that seems like a low number to me for the city. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meiser. Any additional comments or questions regarding this hearing? If not, I will call this hearing closed. Commissioners, you have before you several communications from staff recommending various legislation. Going to have a motion to accept those communications.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Commissioners, we have 6 consent items to consider this evening. Do any of you wish to move any of these consent items to the regular agenda? Ms. Kressler, you present the consent agenda items.
Yes, Mr. President. Give a moment to get it up on the screen. Okay. The first item A is a change order and final for the Camp Street resurfacing and reconstruction project. That is a deduct. Item B is accepting 4 parcels of land through the land reutilization program. Item C is for a subrecipient agreement with the Erie County Senior Center for their Meals on Wheels program. Item D is a subrecipient agreement with OGO for their remote food locker program. Item E is an amendment, the third, to the general appropriations ordinance. And item F is the stock transfer only of a liquor permit for Speedway located on Campbell Street, Sandusky.
Commissioners, having heard these resolutions, ordinances, and liquor permit hearing requests, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
make a motion to accept the consent agenda items A through F, and declaring that all ordinances and/or resolutions as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in the ordinances and/or resolutions, whether it be in accordance with Section 13 or 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Kressler, you poll the commission on the motion, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the resolution, ordinances, and liquor permit hearing request.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Those resolutions, ordinances, and requests for liquor permit hearing are passed. We'll now turn to our regular agenda. Ms. Kressler, you present item number 1, please.
Yes, item number 1 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to expend funds for the purchase and installation of security controls and video surveillance for the Mylander Pavilion at the Jackson Street Pier from Johnson Control Incorporated of Cleveland, Ohio, through the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Got a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Hamilton, I know this agenda item has your name on it. Perhaps you can answer the questions posed by a resident regarding the appropriateness of installing cameras at this location and I don't know you or perhaps Mr. Webster can answer the appropriateness of water and sewer paying for it.
Through you, Commission President, this is putting down our standard security design that we do in all our new buildings now. This will bring our cameras and our door controls online so the PD can see them at any time, day or night. They can get alerts for activity. One of the first reasons we looked at putting door controls on these was we have a control room in there that contains some water and sewer controls that control a lot of devices, which is sensitive in nature. And also being able to control that building as much as we lease it out, changing keys, changing fobs, changing stuff like that, we can change these things online. The water and sewer funds are used primarily because there is water and sewer infrastructure in there and on the pier. So as the security thing comes out the IT budget is split with water and sewer. Because we help maintain that, we also help watch it and control it. So that's why we use water and sewer funds. On the incidents fronts, we've had accidents, we've had cars running into some of our bollards and things like that down there. And putting the cameras in and the controls in gives us visibility into what's happening. Instead of trying to close the gate after something has happened, we're trying to get out in front of it. Is it needed? I think nowadays, surveillance to watch what's going on and protect our infrastructure is needed. I think it's an important part. And I think as much as $30,000 is a lot of money, it's not when it gives us eyes into what's happening on the pier and protecting our residents as well. Our residents use this equipment. It's there to protect them as much as it is to protect our buildings and our infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Hamlin. That certainly satisfies my need to know. Additional comments or questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Weiser.
That was a great explanation. I was kind of curious about the same thing, but I just wondered if, I know later we have a fiber optics issue coming up on the agenda. Is there fiber optics available down at that structure?
Yes, that's what's allowing us to bring this up. Okay. Now we have fiber down there, we can start connecting them up because we need a lot of bandwidth to be able to see this stuff and pull it back to the central location.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
this door locking, is this like remote? The police department's going to unlock the door from the police department? Is that the concept?
They will be able to.
They'll be able to do that?
Yes.
Are we currently fully functional with cameras and ability to lock and unlock the door at the transit station and the?
Yes, we are.
That's all taken
Yes,
care of. Okay, the water devices that you say are in there, what are we talking about? Water to the building? And
Yeah,
what else?
so
What else that
we
entail?
have a control room in there that we share with IT equipment. We've got control for water and sewer stuff down there. I don't know the exact details of what's in there, but I can take you in and show you in there one day.
That's okay. Maybe the manager knows. What are we control, or someone from engineering, what are we controlling in that building that deals with water, other than the water to the building?
It's along the lines of controls for to move fresh water and the sewer and control the flows. And there we have readers that keeps track of what's happening in there.
How do we control the water downtown before we put that building up? I mean, I'm listening to what you're saying, and as IT guy, I realize you're giving me the best answer you have. But as yet, I'm trying to figure out, I need to know, to justify raising my water bill to pay for a surveillance system, I'm trying to figure out what this is actually controlling, what's in there for the water department. And if you don't know, just say so. You don't have to figure it out.
I don't know the exact details. I think as we start bringing some of this equipment out of the ground, where it tends to live now, we bring it out into like closets and buildings. If you think of all of our lift stations, all of those are secure. You know, anything that comes out of the ground and has any kind of control system on it, we try and lock it down as hard as we can.
Mr. Chairman, is anybody from engineering here on board?
Excuse me?
Somebody from engineering, someone knows. It doesn't make sense that suddenly we're controlling all the water downtown and lift stations from that building. And I understand you're doing the best you can, but I need somebody that actually knows.
It's just the stuff on the pier, and I don't think Aaron will have details of exactly what's in there either, to be honest. I can definitely get you the information.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, okay, another question. Cameras. What are we taking pictures of? I mean, are we shooting a camera from the building out or from outside to the entrances of the building? You presented this as safety of this building. So where the cameras are going to be, or what are they facing? What are they looking at?
Cameras will be on the exterior. The four corners will have 4-point cameras, so we can get a full bird's eye view of around the whole building. We have a 180 overlooking the customers, the parking lot out towards the customers building, which will also pull in the roundabout on the other side. And then we have another one that shoots up the right-hand side of the pier. So we will catch probably 2/3 of the pier and also the sidewalk on Shoreline Drive. So we'll get a good all-round picture of what's happening and the good time, to detect the good time also.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm not totally opposed to security there. We could put security on any building. Raising our water rates to pay for it they haven't given an explanation that's reasonable. So I'm actually going to vote no, and that's why. We're spending too much money of water and sewer on things that have very little to do with water and sewer. I can't believe that anything that's in that building controls anything other than the water going into the building. It doesn't make any sense for that. Otherwise, where did they move this from, and what did we do before that building existed? So those are my objections. Let me make a motion. I make a motion that we table this until they come up with a better solution for paying for it. And it can go with or without a second, but I can't vote for this using sewer water anymore the way we are.
Is there a second to Commissioner Poole's motion? There is not. That motion fails for a second. Ms. Cresser, you call roll on the existing motion, please.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Cresser, you present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, item number 2 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a second amendment to the agreement for professional design services with the Mannequin Smith Group Incorporated of Maumee, Ohio, for the Meg Street Reconstruction and Multi-Use Path Project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Klein, I think you're probably up there somewhere. I wonder if you'd give us an explanation of what we're doing here on this ordinance.
Yes, sir. Through the commission president to the commission. So this is the second amendment to the Meg Street reconstruction. I'd like to actually back up, take a step back and go back to the water, which was the first amendment. And what that one was we were redoing the water lines at this location, basically from Washington to Water Street along Meg's. As we've always done since I've been here, is we've tried to address the underground infrastructure anytime we're doing a reconstruction project. where we're actually doing some deep work for the base for the roads. And as part of that project, or as part of that amendment, one thing that we found is that the sewer and the water lines are over 100 years old. The water line that is on the street north of Washington is actually the original water line that came out of the water treatment plant when it was at the old city hall. And so is the sewer line. So what we're doing at this location now under the second amendment is we will be separating the sewers, which will ensure that we are taking some of that stormwater flow off of the interceptor and sending it directly to the bay. We're going to be installing the sanitary line, and we're going to be making the extensions to the right-of-way so that we can accommodate any future developments, and including the Justice Center, which is extremely important, because the last thing we want to do, as you guys are well aware, is come back next year or in 2 years and redig underneath the road that we're doing. So because of that, we're going to be including the drainage in this project and the new catch basins at the intersections at Market, Washington, and Water Street.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Commissioners, questions or comments from Mr. Klein? Ms. Kretzer, we call a roll on the motion, please.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Kretzer, you present item number 3, please.
Yes, item number 3 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed Columbus Avenue lift station project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of cost thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Klein, I know you haven't wandered off too far, but if you can share with us perhaps the location of this and exactly what we're doing. I know we're just about running out of lift stations to improve, so that's a good thing.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Actually, that's what's kind of exciting about this project, is that it's the last lift station that we need to do some major upgrades to. We've done quite a few major upgrade projects, as you all are aware, in the last 7-8 years. So being that this is the last one, and it's the stormwater lift station for the Columbus Avenue underpass, the generator is 50 years old at this location. And we also want to install some variable frequency drives and improve the SCADA system out there. So our crews have done an amazing job had done an amazing job of holding everything together for 30 or 40 years and just piecing and parting everything. And they're extremely excited that the commission has approved the expenditure of these funds so that we can get our infrastructure to be more reliable for the residents and the drivers. So I really appreciate all the support the last few years for these infrastructure improvements, and the guys out in the field really appreciate it as well.
Mr. Klein, in addition to that excellent explanation, I wonder if you'd just give us a few words on I believe there's a component in this package regarding fiber that is really an investment in the future of that part of the city. And I wonder if you'd just speak to the dollars we're going to invest now are going to pay dividends up and down Columbus Avenue.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. The way that this system currently operates is when we get a phone call that the pumps have turned on and that we might have a problem at the underpass, we have to send somebody physically to the location. Well, to be able to control it remotely is very important. Most of our newer lift stations have that feature and that technology, and we can control it from the wastewater treatment plant. And we're working with IT to be able to control it maybe from an iPad or some other secured server location or secured device. So what we're doing, the nearest location that we can pull fiber from is Camp Street. So we're going to be running fiber from Camp overhead along the rail line on existing poles and bring it down to Columbus. What that's also going to do is allow us to tie in the other lift stations in the future that are along those exact same runs. So it is a significant component for this project, but it's going to take fiber to Columbus Avenue for the lift station. And then as Stu determines in the future, he might be able to spread that north or south or go even farther east if he determines. But as part of this project, we want to make sure that we can control it remotely.
Thanks, Mr. Klein. Comments or questions, Commissioners? Ms. Cresser, you call the roll on the motion, please.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That resolution is passed. Ms. Cresser, you present item number 4, please.
Yes, item number 4 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed CDBG fiscal year 2021 demolition project number 2 and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Twine.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Holliday, we had a question from a resident regarding the garage tear down on one of those properties. I wonder if you can share with us any dialogue you may have had in that procedure.
Thank you, Commissioner Brady. I have not had any dialogue. The process for the demolition of these begins with code enforcement, and I know that they've identified each of these structures as needing to be demolished. In the case of 2 of these properties, it is just the garages that will be demolished. That work needs to be done, and for whatever reason cannot or will not be done by the private owners. So unless anyone else on the call this evening has anything to add, that would be the information we could provide at this time on those 2 particular properties.
I'm aware of the fact that this is not a simple process to get to this point. There are a lot of opportunities for dialogue back and forth during this, and I don't think we rush out there to find properties to tear down. So I am convinced that if there was a possibility of saving this, it has been explored. Mr. Holliday doesn't have any reference to that, but I know from how our system is set up that these things don't happen in a 5-minute period. They happen over months and sometimes years. So I'm convinced that we're on the right track. Additional comments or questions, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Meiser.
Having served on the Housing Appeals Board, I could see, you're right, it's vetted out to this point. Maybe we should start having Mr. Rucker or somebody when we have these type issues at the commission meeting be present. But I know that these go on, and they get 30-day extensions, 60-day extensions, so if that opportunity came up and the homeowners did want to build the garage, I'm sure that would have been a discussion. But I like the idea. I think that's a great idea. I'd rather see if it's going to be assessed on their taxes. I'll use an example. Just happened this week. The high winds, or the tree fell down across the street. Elderly lady that cannot afford to take the tree down out of her backyard, and it's actually in the water. and it's it's a navigational hazard, and she just doesn't have the money to take it out. So that'd be great if instead of code enforcement going and saying taking it out, maybe put it under taxes over a period of time, but also that takes a little bit of money in the bank to support that over the years. So it's I like that idea. I never thought of it, but I think that we should have code enforcement from now on if we have these type of things, sit here and explain what we went through to get to here.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
I have also observed the Housing Appeals Board and watched many committees dealing with these code enforcement actions, and I'm as convinced as Commissioner Meinzer is that this probably never came up. And yes, I recognize the system drags on and on and on, but it's usually people talking over each other's heads. I think that we should, it's a good idea that we should, no reason for us to pay more money to tear a building down that would have taken to give them a percentage to actually build it. And I'm going to vote no on not tear. I'd like to take that out of there. No, I don't want to tear this building down until I know for certain. I mean, it's nice that you want to give an attaboy to everybody and assume that they did it, but I doubt very seriously. Just as Mr. Meinzer said, I never thought of it. And I bet nobody else did either, because it's not part of the process. They just come in, do their inspection, process the paperwork. I've seen it, watched the meetings, and it's a circle. So I encourage us to say maybe we'll take this out, that garage, until we know for certain that that's what's going on, that they were offered an opportunity or the garage is beyond repair and that should be done and before we go any further. That's what I think.
I'm going to vote yes, just by the mere fact that there's no, I don't know any of the details, but nobody's here today. You know, you would think that a family member, or a grandson, or I don't know if they're elderly, I don't know what the details are, but somebody would have came here and asked us not to tear it down, I would think. I think it's just from the lack of somebody being here, sticking up for them, they want it torn down.
Do you know?
Mr. Cresser, call roll on the motion, please.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes, we can do this. I won't hold up the whole project. There's 10 things on it.
That resolution is passed. That concludes our regular agenda. We'll turn to our city manager for his report.
Thank you, Commission President Brady, commissioners, audience, and staff. I will start this evening with the donations. First, a donation of 4 cases of water, 8 cases of ice cream, cups, plastic spoons, napkins, and an assortment of snacks were received from an anonymous donor for the Neighborhood Ice Cream Socials. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. With our thanks.
Second, Sandusky Rec received an anonymous donation in the amount of $200 to the Youth Scholarship Fund. I'd also ask for a motion to approve that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Again, with our thanks.
And our final donation for the evening, Sandusky Recreation received a donation of 20 pizzas from Tim Perry at Pizza House East for the Kids Cruise event on the Good Time One in August. Perry has always been generous to Sandusky Rec anytime we look to feed the youth in our programs. We'd like to thank him and ask for a motion to accept that generous donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion be approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. With our thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to Public Works, Forestry staff will be planting a few dozen trees along the streets at various locations throughout the city. Residents who wish to have a tree planted in their own boulevard are invited to call 419-627-5829 to be added to a list for future plantings. Also, the staff at Oakland Cemetery will be conducting fall cleanup on Monday, October 4th, which will include removing all items on site and live flowers around graves. Patrons who have items within the cemetery will need to remove them before Monday if they wish to keep them. Also, various divisions will begin routine winterization throughout the city in October, including removal of docks and buoys, draining of park fountains, and closure of restrooms and other facilities, saving any facility in use for business or recreation until last, unless temperatures dictate otherwise. And a reminder that all residents are welcome to drop off yard waste free of charge at Barnes Nursery at 1630 Camp Road in Huron on Saturday, October 9th and Sunday, October 10th. For economic development, we wanted to welcome a few new businesses. Sandusky business owner and resident Erica Taylor, who opened Body by Erica Taylor at a new larger location with assistance from the city's Economic Development Fund, and also Alec Trumpauer and his new business, Lake Erie Fisherman, located in downtown Sandusky. Welcome and good luck. For community development, staff have entered into a partnership with the Erie County Health Department to support the health department's home lead abatement program. Staff will assist the department with this important program by performing the necessary environmental reviews for each project in accordance with federal requirements, and the city will be compensated for the staff time from the grant proceeds. For planning, the second meeting on transient rentals will be held on October 4th at the City Fire Station on West Market Street. The public is also invited to answer a survey about transient rental in the city. The survey can be found at www.cityofsandusky.com/transient rental. A summary of the division's findings related to transient rentals will be presented to the Planning Commission at a future meeting. Also, the Planning Division will begin the RFP process this week, seeking a professional planning firm to lead the creation of a South Side neighborhood plan. Community feedback from the neighborhood high school socials will be incorporated into the call for proposals. And the Community Development Department, in partnership with the Department of Public Works, will begin the RFQ process this week of seeking professional design and engineering services for the Columbus Avenue streetscape design process from Adams Street to Water Street. This project was identified as a priority for implementation in the downtown plan adopted earlier this year. The next Arts and Cultural Commission meeting is scheduled for October 19th at 5:15. The Landmark Commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 29th at 5 p.m. The Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 21st at 4:30 p.m. And the Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 27th at 5 p.m. Also, an update for Sandusky Transit. Due to staff shortages because of COVID, Sandusky Transit temporarily reduced service on all 6 fixed route lines so that service ends at 8 p.m. each night. The Blue Line only will remain serving its late night regular schedules on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. This change will go through at least October 5th and will be reevaluated at that time. Finally, recreation. Sandusky Rec is working with downtown merchants for the Sandusky Rec is working with downtown merchants, the Sandusky Fire Department, and the Good Time One for this year's downtown trick or treat scheduled for Saturday, October 30th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The event will kick off with a Monster Mash parade and include a pumpkin drop on Columbus Avenue. The event will end with an additional Monster Mash parade and a trick or treat at 1 p.m. Pre-registration for the cruise is required by visiting www.cityofsandusky.com/recreation. Also, a Happy Little Trees painting class is scheduled for Friday, October 29th at 8 House Brew to celebrate the birthday of late painter Bob Ross. Pre-registration is required at www.cityofsandusky.com/recreation. And finally, the Citywide Sandusky Trick or Treat is scheduled for Sunday, October 31st from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We encourage participants to wear reflective clothing, a mask, carry a flashlight during darker hours, and stay in the sidewalks. That concludes my remarks for this evening. I'm happy to take comments or answer any questions. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions for the city manager?
Chairman.
Mr. Bull.
Yeah, what's his plan on the south side plan? What exactly are is that going to be? What are we asking people to design?
Through the commission president to Commissioner Poole, the south side plan has been in the works for some time now. And we have engaged with the institutions in that neighborhood, including the hospital and the schools, as well as several residents and churches within the neighborhood. The idea is to take a look, not too dissimilarly from what we did with the downtown plan last year or the Sandusky Neighborhood Initiative in previous years, but with a stronger focus on just the south side, which will exist from Campbell Street to the east, to the Mills Creek Golf Course to the west, south of the railroad tracks to Perkins Avenue. We're going to have a strong focus on land use, including housing and housing rehabilitation strategies for that neighborhood. We're going to continue to focus on walkability and connections. That is a neighborhood that in previous studies and understandings is very proximate to many important assets, whether that's healthcare and employment with Firelands at the south and main campus, or alternatively access to Sandusky City Schools. And there's nearby manufacturing and actually quite a bit of retail just east of Hayes Avenue along Perkins Avenue, but there aren't strong connections that allow the neighborhood to thrive based on those conditions in the neighborhood. So we're going to look at the housing, we're going to look at building stronger connections among the assets of the neighborhood, and then there will be a strong focus on public space, including the future of Churchwell Park and the American Crayon site with a harder look at recreation. The goal is to make sure that this is a resident-led process in which we will take a very hard look at what the community wants to see for that neighborhood, and we're beginning to align resources in our capital budget and stimulus funding to make sure that we can deliver on the promise that comes out of this plan.
Thank you. Those are general goals that I obviously apply to all neighborhoods. Can you share or can send us, since you've been doing this for a while, the inputs that you've had and what's been requested by the neighborhood? You say you've been dealing with neighborhoods and churches for some time. Could you give us a copy of what they've said that they'd like to see done to their neighborhood?
Sure. Through Commission President Brady to Commissioner Poole, what we've asked them is how best to design this process and what goals are. We can send a list of everyone that we've talked to on a number of occasions, but the goal is for them to be leaders of this process, working alongside the City Commission, the city staff, and the consultants. So the greatest input from them will be received throughout the process itself. But we can definitely give a list. I know Jonathan and I have had several calls over the last several months, along with other members of the staff, with some of those stakeholders.
That list would be great, and whatever it is, the input, I'm interested in what the neighborhood says they need to improve their lives. Thank you.
Sure.
Additional questions for the city manager, commissioners? Not, we'll move to items of old business. Commissioners, do you have any items of old business to bring up?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Minder.
I guess it's old business now, but I misspoke earlier when I thought there was an agenda item coming up on the Amtrak station. I read all the documents a couple of days ago, and my computer died. So I think it might be for Mr. Hamilton. We're putting the fiber optics in at the Amtrak station to help out with the lift station. And I kind of get the whole border patrol thing at the Jack Street Pier and the security, and back when downtown wasn't as nice before Jack Street Pier, we've had a couple deaths down there, people thrown in the water, and it was a mystery. So what I think is the Amtrak station now, and moving forward with the trains and the commuting, I think that's a great way to travel. And I go out there quite often to pick up family members and guests, and at 1 and 4 in the morning, it's a little sketchy, it's not lit up. And I'd really like to see some of those high, whatever it is, I'm not technology, but if you can get cameras and lighting and all that stuff to go over to fiber optics from the Amtrak station, I think more people would utilize that. There are more and more. Every night I go out there and pick people up. I used to see like 1 or 2 elderly people, or maybe a couple Amish ladies, or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, this looks so vulnerable to me, just because I'm an old man and nervous. But I think that'd be a great idea. What we're doing at the Jack Street Pier, put it at the Amtrak station.
Good suggestion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
I'm not sure, Commissioner Meisner, the question I ask is that not already there at the Amtrak station?
I don't know. I'm just saying, I noticed
the answer he gave was that we already have done that. That's why I asked.
the fiber optics are going from Amtrak to the Harrison Street?
We have the same security system already put in at the Amtrak station. That was the question. That's the question I asked, to which he told me was yes. We requested this over 2 years ago, that the police department's able to visually see what's going on there. allegedly. Now,
Well,
if you misunderstood, maybe you can read, that's what I took from it. I hope that's correct.
I think that it is. Our IT person is nodding affirmatively, so I believe he spoke correctly, and that is in place. And Mr. Meinzer, it's obvious to me that you must have family in Chicago or go to Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago, New York, wherever.
That's how we know that it's a 4 o'clock in the morning train.
Yeah, I know. I do it myself, you know.
Yeah, and it's.
It's dark, you know, sometimes you're alone, especially in the winter, the snow's blowing. I
It
mean,
feels more safe now than it did 20 years ago.
well, now that I know we have fiber optic cameras, I'm sorry, this is all pre-me. That's what I'm saying. You know, I just want to make sure we're doing it.
It's all right, good.
All right.
Any
I'm
additional
sorry
items?
then.
Any additional items of old business?
Moot point.
Additional items of old business, commissioners. Items of new business, commissioners. I will ask for a motion for a public hearing for the November 8th commission meeting for an amendment to the zoning map for 1035 Hancock Street. May I have a motion?
I'll
for
make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion?
What's it going to be when it grows up?
It is a zoning, all I have on my paper is it's a public hearing for a zoning, change in the zoning map for 1035 Hancock Street. I presume we'll find that out at the public hearing or prior to. Ms. Cresser, you call a roll on the motion, please.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That public hearing is set. Mr. Murray, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think I did.
No, that's fine. I would ask for I'm going to move that we hold an executive session personnel commission clerk.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion? Ms. Cresser, will you call a roll on that motion, please?
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Meinzer?
Yeah.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
That executive session is set. Additional items of new business, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Harris.
I just wanted to share this with you. I thought about just contacting you all, I guess, individually, but I might as well put it out there now. I was actually approached by Mr. Ben Olemaker over the weekend, and he had actually suggested, and I thought it was kind of neat, but he suggested that perhaps maybe us as a commission find a way to pay homage to those who kind of, pioneered the investment here downtown and, kind of sparked this whole revitalization, such as, Lou Hibbert and many other names that make up those bodies. But so again, if there might be a way that we can all sort of kind of put our heads together, and I can even get with Mr. Olemaker to see, if he might have some suggestions as well. But I just thought that would be something neat if we can, sort of task ourselves to do something like that. So
There's a lot of them, and I hope the list continues.
yeah.
Additional items of new business. If not, we will move to the residents portion. Any residents like to provide a comment on any item affecting city business? I ask you to step to the microphone and identify yourself and where you live, and we'll listen to you.
Chairman, Steve Jolly, 1033 Main Street. I just wanted to offer clarification on that block grant funding for that garage. There would be no direct tax dollars in that project because that money comes from HUD and washed through the state of Ohio. So those are HUD dollars, and also it's illegal to assess if you use block grant dollars. So there could be no assessments. I mean, if you wanted to talk about redirecting that funding, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, you might be able to do that, but you would have to do that back during the planning process. I just wanted to offer some clarification to that,
Thank you, Mr. Joe.
Mr.
that
Chairman,
discussion.
I wasn't sure he was talking about. Are we talking about the garages they're talking about
Yeah.
tearing down?
Yes.
Then the point is that we cannot use money to fix the garage, we can only tear it down? Is that your point?
No, the point is that someone had mentioned that those were tax dollars, and they didn't see why those couldn't be turned back. Those are not direct tax dollars. They come from HUD through the state of Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Commissioner Meisner.
So, Mr. Bajali, to be clear, CDBG money, HUD dollars that will go into that could not be assessed.
You can't assess.
Okay,
once
so
you
we
spend
cannot,
tax.
like,
Yeah.
my example was a lady had a tree down. We can't, as a city, we can't go cut the tree down and assess her taxes to pay for it.
Okay.
Well, the city.
through CDBG money, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the garage. You couldn't use CDBG dollars to take that tree down and assess later.
I could not.
That's law.
Okay,
You
that's
can't do
that's
that.
all.
Just
that
like
was-
if you
yes.
paved the street.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Pajala. Any other residents like to provide a comment? Any item affecting city business?
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way, Sandusky. I forgot to get my address before, but we'll fix that problem. I brought a little bit of show and tell with me tonight. It's kind of hard to see this, but this is a picture of that I took during this past week's northeastern storm. It's of the Jackson Street Pier at the north end where the city had to close the pier off due to high water that had pooled on the pier. I think it was shut down for almost 2 days, and I don't know if there's still a punch list available for that pier, or if this was an oversight by the engineer or the design team that did this project. But I would hope that the city would find some way to fix. It's a drainage issue, and I'm sort of a storm watcher myself, and when we're going to have a northeaster, the only place you really have to be able to drive down and watch the storms roll in is from the Jackson Street Pier. We've always been able to do that prior to construction. There's no reason why we can't continue to have that pier open during northeasters. It's just going to take some kind of an adjustment to fix the drainage issues on the pier. And I believe this is the third time this year since it's been opened that we've had to shut the pier down because of the issue of pooling water at the end of the pier. Now, we're talking probably about 8 inches of water that just sits there for almost a day, even after the storms are gone. So if we can find some way to fix that issue with water and sewer funds, to that effect. The other thing is, very quickly, is in CanesCleveland.com, which is an online service. It indicated that Maroos Brothers received a $470,000 state tax credit for money they spent buying a 600 slip marina, which is Battery Park. Was not aware of the fact that they bought Battery Park or the marina from the city or from the state. And they're also looking for potential state and federal and local programs to help with their private development of Battery Park. And we haven't really heard a thing at this table, and I don't know if the commission's been updated, but we haven't heard anything about Battery Park being privately developed since probably about 2017, when you all had the Trust for Public Lands come in and do their thing. So I guess my question would be for the city manager is, when is this commission and the citizens going to be updated on what the plans are for Battery Park moving forward? Hopefully it's not just going to appear on the agenda someday. Hopefully there's going to be some additional public discussions, city commission discussions, staff discussions, and even including Maroos Brothers on what the actual plan is and when that plan is for Battery Park. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question. You mentioned that you saw some type of documentation that the Maroos Brothers received.
Yeah, it's on Canes.com.
And it said it bought Battery Park?
It said a 600 slip marina, and the only under 600 slip marina I know of.
So you're making an assumption it's Battery Park?
I'm not making an assumption.
I'm just asking, was the word Battery Park associated with it?
I don't know of any other marina in Sandusky that they would have bought.
Is that in Sandusky?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's in Sandusky, and they're using that money, that $470,000 tax credit, to do the fight building.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Murray.
I don't know anything about the Canes.com and what it is that they purport to report, but I do have a very firm recollection that what we did was we permitted the assignment of the existing leasehold from the past owners to Maroos Brothers. So there is, in that legal sense, a sale. It's a sale of a leasehold, but it's not the sale of real estate as we typically understand that.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Poole.
may I suggest that it would be helpful to anyone that's coming to speak to committee about things of this nature, that you bring some documentation you can hand out to us so we can look at. If you're going to cite something, we need to be able to verify what it is and determine, although I know it's an honest presentation, being able to verify what they're actually talking about and determine what's right and what's wrong. So I just appreciate it if people would do that in the future.
Additional comments from residents?
Mr. Chairman, Steve Pajali, 1033 Main Street. Just another minor point of clarification. I think you may have meant cranes. Cranes.com, not canes.com. Okay, so you may be able to find it.
Great, thanks, Mr. Pajali.
That helps, I can look that up.
If there are no further public comments, we will move now into executive session. I think we're going upstairs for that.
We can come down to you if you wish.
Return from executive session, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
And a motion seconded, we adjourn.